According to the Oxford University Press, in the Victorian era, women were expected to have frail dispositions, prone to nervousness, fainting spells, irritability, and a lack of sexual desire. Back then, it was even thought that the woman's womb could be injured by studying Greek or mathematics. The term used for this problem was hysteria, from the Greek word hystera, meaning womb. It was the Greeks who thought the womb could move around the body, pressing on other organs and causing illness. Many of these women in the past were suffering from PTSD, PMS, or maybe perimenopause. Don't worry, ladies, I won't leave the men out. If they displayed these types of behavior, they were just considered mentally ill. But today, we have a much better understanding of the human body, and hopefully, the human psyche. We have a whole spectrum of terms that describe psychiatric disorders. Now, we aren't psychiatrists over here at Hard Times and True Crimes, so we won't diagnose anybody. But sometimes you just have to call a spade a spade. And when you hear this story today, I think you'll agree that hysteria was not the problem. Maybe the killer was simply a psychopath. But does that mean they shouldn't be held criminally responsible for their behavior? Well, you can listen and decide for yourself.
I'm Darlene.
And I'm Melody.
This is Hard Times and True Crimes.
We've recently hit a little milestone with the podcast. We just, it hasn't been long ago that we put out our 50th episode.
Right.
Which was exciting.
Yes,
Yay.
it was.
And
it's hard to believe, isn't it?
It is. Because we did start out doing them every 2 weeks.
Right.
And then quickly moved to every week. Mm-hmm. So we're up to our 50th. And that's a milestone we're excited about.
Yes.
And we kind of let it go by without acknowledging it. So by the time this episode comes out, I believe this will probably be episode 56.
Yeah, I think so.
But let's just recap out of those 50 episodes. What was your favorite episode that you did? And then what was your favorite episode that I did?
Okay. So I think the favorite one, my favorite of yours, was the Wesley Elkins case.
Okay.
I love those older cases, and that was so interesting to me.
Yeah. And he was the young boy, the 11-year-old. Yeah.
Yes. That was a very interesting case to me. There were several, but I loved that one. And then of mine, I think my favorite one was, because it was just such a fun story to tell, but it's a little bit cringy to go back and listen to because it was one of our early, I think it was only my second one or third.
Yeah.
But was the Bloody Woolfolk murders, about the family, the Woolfolk family.
And that had a lot of twist in it too.
Oh my goodness, it did. So how about you?
Interestingly enough, my favorite one of yours is a toss-up between the Lonely Hearts Killers. That's always been one of my favorites because the music you put with it and Curtis's intro of reading that letter.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. All of that together just made a really interesting, great episode.
Okay.
But funny enough, I also really liked the snake one.
Oh, yeah. The Alabama snake.
Yes. Only because I just found it terrifying.
Oh, my goodness.
I was on the edge of my seat with that one.
Yes.
And I just was like, what? Yeah. So I think it's a toss-up between those two of my favorites of yours. My favorites of mine, I believe, is probably Smith Reynolds.
Oh, well, yes. That was a good one.
I enjoyed researching that one, and I'm sure it's because, I did go to Winston, and I did go visit the Renolda house during that, so it brought it more real to me. And so it was just a very fascinating story, too. So I think that's been my favorite of mine so far.
That was a really good one.
But
really good one.
Yeah. You were talking about going back and listening to those earlier ones. I wanted to do that. And you saying how, cringe. I have not done it yet because I'm like, I don't know if I want to hear them because I hope that we've gotten better.
We have.
And to listen, I'm like, I would
have.
probably cringe, but I need to do that soon.
Yeah, you do. It'll help you see we're making progress.
Yeah. So I think at the end of every year now, we should do a recap of what we think our favorites
Yeah,
were.
that's a good idea.
Yeah. Okay. Well, today, the episode I'm going to do, we're going to go across the pond. Okay, so we're going to go over to the UK in the area of Margate, Kent,
Okay.
where Christiana Edmunds was born in 1828. She was the daughter of William Edmunds and his wife Anne, and it was known that this family had a history of mental illness on their father's side. So her father, William, he was a successful architect, and he and his wife and 5 children, they enjoyed a pretty comfortable lifestyle. He was making pretty decent money.
Yeah.
They were able to afford a good education for their children. But eventually, his mental illness caught up with William. And it was when Christiana was a teen, she actually did notice a change in her father's behavior. He became more erratic and more violent, started having some episodes of that nature. And finally, there was just no choice but to have him committed to an asylum.
Okay.
And that is actually where he eventually died when Christiana was just 19.
That's so sad because they just had so few resources.
Yes,
Back then.
really, that's true. And when her father died, now she was fortunate to have been left with an independent income.
Okay.
Because again, he was doing pretty well for himself before that. So she didn't actually have to scramble around for a job or a husband.
Okay.
Right? Because back then, this was actually, I haven't told you, well, I told you it was 1828, but
Yeah.
this was Victorian England. Most women back then needed a husband or a father
Right.
to provide for them, but she did have this independent income, so she wasn't strapped. But she did continue living with her mother and one of her sisters. She did have other siblings. We'll talk about them a little bit later. So these 3, they moved to Brighton sometime in the 1860s, where her mother made a living as a landlord.
Okay.
The apple didn't fall far from the tree where Christiana was concerned. She was known to have fits of anger, anxiety, and emotional outbursts at times. And being that this was Victorian England, she was diagnosed as having hysteria,
Oh, yeah.
as was the case when women displayed such behavior. And I'm thinking, well,
I know.
PMS and
I know, right?
I'm
Menopause.
guilty. Right. I'm guilty a little bit. By the end of that decade, Christiana had met Dr. Charles Beard, who lived nearby. She began corresponding with him, and they struck up a relationship. We don't know the extent of the relationship, but it was romantic to some degree.
Okay.
For Christiana's part, she was infatuated and ready to take it up a notch with the beloved doctor. But there was one problem, and that was that Dr. Beard actually had a wife and 5 children.
Well, yeah, that'll put a damper on things.
Right, and he had no intention of messing that up.
Okay.
So we don't know if he planned to just have an affair with Christiana or if it was truly just one-sided and it was just all on her part and she was chasing him. But she was definitely determined to have him.
Okay.
So after a few months of carrying on, and they were exchanging letters back and forth, he kind of realizes things are getting out of hand with her. And so he's kind of ready to put the kibosh on that.
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't want the community to find out that he's been disloyal to his wife.
That's not a good look.
Definitely not. He maintained that there had been no physical relationship of any kind.
Okay.
Now, whether he had led her on or not in some capacity, we don't know.
Sure.
But at this point, he did tell Christiana that she needed to stop writing him. And this is a quote from one of his letters. "This correspondence must cease. It's no good for either of us."
Okay. I feel like he was leading her on.
Possibly. Well, she was not put off that easily. She couldn't bring herself to give him up. And since he lived nearby, she decided she would go visit him and his wife. And she had done that before on social occasions. They had invited her over at times, with other neighbors and so forth. So that was not out of the ordinary.
Okay.
But she does decide, I'm going to go visit Dr. Beard and his wife. So in September of 1870, Christiana did go visit his wife, Emily. And she brought along a box of chocolate creams for her, like not a hostess gift, but, you go visit someone, you take a gift.
Yeah.
And they both had some of the chocolates during the visit. Now, Mrs. Beard, however, became violently sick after the visit.
Oh, no.
And her husband was immediately suspicious when he found out that Christiana had been there that day to visit.
Mm.
So he accused Christiana of poisoning his wife. Now, of course, Christiana denied it. And she's like, well, I even got sick from those chocolates myself. I had some and I also was sick. So I'm just as much a victim of them as Mrs. Beard. I didn't do this. It was just a box of bad chocolates. Dr. Beard reluctantly dropped his accusation, but nonetheless, he banned Christiana from any further visits to his home. He's probably getting a little nervous, like, I don't want you even talking to my wife anyway, right?
Yeah.
He put down his foot. No more letters, no visits, enough.
Right.
But she was still undeterred. She continued to write him several times a week.
Oh, my gosh.
I'm like, I was researching this. I'm getting this Fatal Attraction vibes.
Yes.
You remember?
Yes,
You've
sure
seen
do.
that, I'm sure.
Yes.
So after this, there were several other instances in the area of people getting sick from the chocolate creams. It was not serious enough to warrant suspicion of anything, but people would get a box of chocolates from this store and they would have like an upset stomach, like severely upset.
Yeah.
But then they would recover. And so, word of mouth was spreading well, and they're starting to wonder about the source of it.
On? Yeah.
Then in the summer of 1871, a man named Charles Miller was on holiday with his brother's family. And while visiting, they went to J.G. Maynard's sweet shop and bought some chocolate creams, which he shared with his 4-year-old nephew, Sidney Barker. Both of them got sick, severely sick. And while Miller soon recovered, sadly, little Sidney did not, and he died.
That's terrible.
Isn't it? Sidney's stomach and some of those chocolates were sent to London to be chemically tested, and indeed were found to contain strychnine. The boy's death was ruled accidental, but now the Brighton coroner called for an inquest into that death. Many people came forward to testify, including Christiana. She quickly inserted herself into the investigation, and referring to the incident when she had visited Emily Beard, she even testified that she and a friend had gotten sick after eating those chocolates from Maynard's store.
Mm.
They needed to determine how the poison had come to be in those candies to begin with.
I was going to say, I bet that's not good for business.
That's where we're going right now. The shop owner, John Maynard, he was not implicated in the event, and he volunteered to destroy all of his stock of that cream candy so no one else would be stricken with it.
Right.
But yeah, it's not good for his business at all. Shortly after that, Sidney's grieving father received a series of 3 letters urging him to sue Maynard for the death. The letters were all anonymous, but helpfully, they did assert that the young lady who had testified at the inquest would be willing to help with any further action he might take against Maynard. Yes.
Interesting.
And oddly enough, although Maynard had destroyed all of that chocolate that he had said he would, people still continued to get sick from more poisoned candies. And now it's beginning to spark fear.
Sure.
Nobody knows who's going to be next. And poor Mr. Maynard, like we said, he's losing business. He's getting a bad reputation. So the chief constable placed an ad in the local paper offering a reward for anyone who could provide information on that deadly deed. It was now nearing the end of summer in early August, and several prominent members of the town, including the doctor's wife, Emily Beard, received parcels of fruits, pies, and tarts. Okay. Now, Christiana also received one of the packages of these goodies, and they were signed with unknown initials. The Beard family had actually allowed 2 of their servants to have a taste of theirs, and they got sick shortly after eating a plum cake that they had tried.
Okay.
They were terribly sick almost immediately. They didn't say anything about the Beards getting sick. I'm like, I hope they didn't let their servants try this first. It kind of sounds like
it was that's terrible.
But nonetheless, we don't know that that's what happened. We just know that they ate some of it and got sick before the Beards ate any. Sure enough, all those treats that had been sent to these prominent town members all contained strychnine as well.
That is okay.
The local newspaper editor received some of them, And I mean, like, it seemed nobody in the village was safe. Christiana told officers that she feared for her safety. She felt it would be impossible to find the culprit. How very strange, she said. I fear you will never find it out. Finally, Christiana wrote one more letter to Dr. Beard, pointing out the 2 near misses his wife had had with the parcel of treats, and then the first poisoning. So Dr. Beard decided it's time to relocate my family. Like, we're not staying here. So he eventually would move his family to Scotland.
Okay.
But before they left, he realized he had to tell the authorities what he suspected, which meant he was going to have to come forward with this relationship that had been going on. And he knew it was going to reveal that, but he did know it was important. So he turned over to them his large assortment of letters from Christiana that she had been sending constantly.
Okay.
Authorities said they were pretty smart. They laid a trap. What they did was they could tell she liked the attention she was getting from those incidents of being, included in being poisoned and stuff. And so they wrote to her about the Barker case. The Sidney Barker, they wrote to Christiana about it. And just as they had hoped, she eagerly wrote back to them, and they were able to get a handwriting match to the letters to Dr. Beard. Wow. So they're like, we know it's her handwriting, and we have a copy of it now. It was a perfect match. They're getting closer to catching her. Upon investigating the events, they found that Miss Edmunds had left Margate 2 days before the parcels had been received in Brighton. She had returned on the same train that had carried those poisoned packages.
Oh, my gosh.
So she was promptly...
She's a psycho.
She was. She was promptly arrested and charged with attempted murder for the delivery of those packages containing tampered cakes and goodies.
Why did she do that to everybody?
Well, that's what they're all wondering. So we'll examine that a little bit.
Okay. Oh, and that little boy.
Yeah, because he died.
Oh,
and he was only 4. Can you imagine?
No.
And it was not an easy death. I mean, strychnine is you don't go down easily with that. It's a suffering. You did your first episode about that.
Yes, I did with the child too.
Yes. 1 week later, on August 24th, 1871, Christiana was given a hearing. She arrived at the hearing in a long silk black dress, a lace shawl, and a veil. And she really enjoyed the drama and being the center of it. The hearings took place over a 2-week time frame, and more evidence started trickling in that formed a picture of what had been going on. After Dr. Beard testified about his wife's poisoning from the chocolates, and then the poisoned parcel that they had received, another witness came forward. One of Christiana's errand boys, named Adam May, said he had been given the task of taking forged prescriptions to various druggists for poisons. Because back then, after a lot of poisonings that happened in the past, they had this new law, and you could only get poison through a prescription.
Okay.
Remember Lizzie Borden also?
Yes.
Yeah. Her errand boy also admitted that he was buying boxes of chocolates for her from Maynard's sweet shop. And she actually had more than him. She had a few errand boys that she would send over to buy these boxes. Later, she would tell them they bought the wrong thing, and she would have them return those boxes to Maynard's. Then...
Did they catch on, like, when all these...
Oh, no, I don't think they did. No.
So sad.
Then, the unsuspecting Maynard would return the chocolates to his shelves, not realizing they had been tampered with.
Oh.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Ladies, I don't know about you, but over the last few years, Melody and I have noticed differences in our skin that have been pretty discouraging. You know, the inevitable signs of aging, fine lines, some wrinkles here and there, dull, dry skin, and sunspots. Thankfully, there's a non-invasive treatment available without having to go under the knife. Tasha Briles at Lakeside Integrative in High Point, North Carolina, offers a total skin package that includes radiofrequency microneedling and laser skin resurfacing that can be done right in her office in under an hour. It stimulates collagen growth and elastin that improves the surface and texture of your skin, as well as tightening it. The laser treats acne scars, minimizes large pores, and lessens, if not completely fades, sunspots. Melody and I were blessed to get this treatment in late fall. We're going back for our after photos within a couple of weeks, and we'll be sure to post them on our Facebook group. Melody was just saying how she felt like it gave her a fresh start for her skin routine. It even cleared up some precancerous skin lesions she had. and it faded my sunspots completely as well as brightened and tightened my skin. We're really thrilled with our results. Lakeside Integrative offers an array of other services for men and women, as well as fillers, laser hair removal, weight loss, hormone, and medical treatments. Don't walk, run to the phone and call Lakeside Integrative to set up your appointment at 336-715-0007. Tell them Darlene and Melody from Hard Times and True Crime sent you.
Yeah.
But what was the purpose?
So she was getting the boys to buy the chocolate, tampering with it, and then saying, you got the wrong thing. They were taking them back, and then he was getting her receipt and putting it back on the shelf. Another witness, druggist Isaac Garrett, testified that he had known Mrs. Edmunds to be a Mrs. Woods for the past 4 years. He told of a time the previous March that he had sold her strychnine on 2 separate occasions because she had claimed she needed it for some pesky cats in her garden. Now, what, you reckon it was common to poison cats?
That's crazy. Nowadays, you'll go to prison for that
I
mess.
know, but apparently if you had pesky stray cats, they just poisoned them because he gave it to her and it didn't bat an eye at her excuse on 2 separate occasions. Other people came forward with similar tales. It became clear there was enough evidence to charge her with multiple instances of poisoning. When the letter to the deceased little Sidney Barker, when he got that letter about you should sue Mr. Maynard,
Yes.
when they compared that to her letters, Christiana's letters that she had written, that handwriting was also one and the same.
What
So,
a evil person.
yeah.
Was she trying to get sympathy from that guy?
Yes,
Okay.
a little bit. And you're on to it right there. So on September 7th, Christiana Edmunds was charged with the murder of Sidney Barker.
Good.
Yeah. The prosecution, they had a motive for the attempted murder of Emily Beard. I mean, it seemed obvious she had been trying to remove the obstacle to her and Dr. Beard's happy union that she thought they would have. But they were wondering, why would she mass poison everybody else in the town?
Right.
Prosecutors theorized that she was trying to cast the blame on Maynard, obviously, and off of herself so that Charles Beard would not block her affections and would welcome her back into his life.
Oh my
She didn't want him to think that she was really the one doing this because she still was trying to keep this relationship.
What a crazy person.
Yeah. But then she would write him a letter and remind him of the near misses of his wife being poisoned. So she really was going back and forth. She was
nuts.
all I can picture in my mind is that woman from Fatal Attraction.
Fatal Attraction, yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
They say history repeats itself.
It does.
We just talked about that a little bit off the microphone from your last episode. It's like all of these things we hear about today in media, they probably happened before in the past.
Nothing new under the sun.
Nothing. Well, there was another theory that she had been experimenting with the others in an attempt to determine exactly how much poison would be needed to finally off Emily Beard once and for all. So she would put a little bit in and see what happened to the people around her. So that was just a theory. It was suspected that she had spent the whole summer trying it out on animals and other unsuspecting victims, and then would note the effects. But they said that's just a speculation. There's nothing to prove that. Nobody really knows her reasons or actions for her actions because she wasn't telling them.
Yeah. She seems like that kind.
Yep. When Christiana was finally brought to trial in 1872, the press was ready to report on every detail of the spectacle, and she did not disappoint. She arrived once more, all in black, just as she had done at those initial hearings. This time she had a fur collar and black gloves. Her dark hair was parted down the middle and plaited on each side, and they said she did look older than the 35 years that she reported she was. However, she was considered to be fairly pretty. In fact, she was consumed with her looks her whole life. And so he's painting this picture of her a little bit. Christiana's defense claimed an insanity defense. I mean, after all, her family's long history of mental illness was on record.
Sure.
And not only had her father gone mad, but she had a sister who had committed suicide.
Oh, wow.
And a brother who had died in an asylum in London.
Okay, so she really did have...
Yeah, I mean, hereditary insanity was thought very probable for her.
Yeah.
Dr. William Wood, a regular expert witness in insanity cases, who ran a private asylum in London, was of the belief that she could not tell right from wrong. 2 other psychologists considered her to be of the morally defective, and I'm putting that word in air quotes because that was their words, morally defective group of lunatics. And that's what we call today a psychopath.
Okay.
They just didn't have that term.
Oh, yeah. I believe that. No, that rings true.
Yeah. One of these psychologists had a special interest in female hysterics, if you will. And he was one who had first used a Turkish bath as a remedy to calm them.
Oh, okay.
All 3 of these distinguished doctors leaned heavily toward her being not guilty by reason of insanity at her trial.
But she knew right from wrong, I feel like.
Well, they didn't feel like she did.
Okay.
Despite that expert testimony from the doctors, the jurors agreed with you.
Oh, okay.
They were not convinced, and the verdict was guilty of murder without recommending mercy.
Okay.
Before being sentenced, Christiana asked to be charged with attempted murder of Emily Beard at the same time. She had decided if she's going to go down, then she wanted Dr. Beard to go down with her. And if she was charged right then, she could introduce the evidence into court that incriminated him along with herself.
Oh,
So
my
she
gosh.
tried that. She tried that. Of course, it was too late for that. They're like, no, we're not charging you with anything else. We've got you for this, and you're going to the gallows.
This will do enough.
She was not going to give up easily, just like she never did. She was headed to the gallows when she dropped a bomb. She was pregnant.
My God. Was she really?
Well, we'll find out.
Okay.
At this time in Victorian England, a pregnant woman could not be hanged until she had given birth. I guess, because they didn't want to kill the child.
Yeah.
When she said that, the proceedings were halted.
Okay.
They had to get women from the spectators' crowd to volunteer, and they found a doctor to come in to examine her. So these women from the crowd and one doctor went into a room with her and did an examination. And they soon returned with the finding that Christiana indeed was not pregnant.
Okay.
So sentencing would resume.
This lady is nuts.
She is nuts. While awaiting the sentencing in prison, she was visited by more doctors who were sensitive to her plight after hearing her medical diagnosis of insanity. After the visit, they had this to say. This woman appears to have had a tranquil, easy, and indifferent childhood and womanhood up to about 3 years ago. The acts were the fruit of a weak and disordered intellect with confused and perverted feelings of a most marked insane character.
Okay, yeah, she fell in love with somebody's husband.
Right?
That's not...
Well, apparently they bought that because her sentence was overturned.
Are you serious?
I'm serious. And instead of hanging from the gallows, they said she'll just go to prison for life. At the age of 43, in 1872, she was transferred to Broadmoor Asylum. She arrived wearing makeup, false hair, which I guess was a wig, and false teeth. She is very vain, one doctor wrote.
I just wonder, that I don't know, though. Broadmoor might have been a rough place to be.
I don't know. Well,
yeah.
I don't know. I don't think so. I'm going to read you a little bit. I'll tell you a little bit more.
Okay.
Which again, back then asylums, they were some pretty rough places.
They were.
So I don't know if this one was mild or if we're just only seeing one side of the
Sure.
picture. Who really knows? At the asylum were other doctors who were not so convinced of that insanity claim.
Mm-hmm.
One reported that she was of a delicate constitution and prone to being hysterical. He went on to say she was also very deceitful.
Yes.
And she was caught several times receiving contraband items from her sister who would smuggle stuff in for her. But it was all makeup products and wigs.
That is hilarious. If that had been a man, though, she'd have been dead.
Yes, I'm sure. She would have gotten hung, right? Yeah. Well, not only was she consumed with her looks, but she acted very coquettishly. And she flirted quite a bit with any male who would receive her attention.
Sounds about right.
Even at the age of 50, she was still at it.
Wow.
In 1877, David Nicholson wrote about her, she affects a youthful appearance and her manner and expression evidently lies towards sexual and amatory ideas.
Wow.
She was still trying to get a man.
Yeah.
Even to her old age, she remained so obsessed with her looks. I'm thinking she would have fit really in well with this social media. Like, I can see her doing her selfies,
Yes.
right? If she lived in this day and time, she would be one of those, like, posing in the mirror with her duck lips.
That is so funny.
So one of her conversations later in life, when she was in her mid-70s, was recorded in the infirmary notes at the asylum. Her, "How am I looking?" And her, whoever was in there with her, "Fairly well." Her, "Are my eyebrows all right?" And the answer was,
gosh.
"Yes." And then her, "I think I'm improving. I hope I shall be better in a fortnight. If so, I shall astonish them. I shall get up and dance. I was a Venus before, and I shall be a Venus again."
Oh my gosh. In her 70s?
In her 70s.
Wow.
Well, Christiana grew old in the asylum, and she did die at the age of 78 from what was simply just termed old age. And no one ever got an explanation from her for the crimes of poisoning the chocolates for the whole town. And nor did she ever show any remorse for them.
Really?
Never.
That is sad. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
There are just people that do not have a conscience.
And it really sounds like she did not. I mean, even to continue that after this little boy died,
Right.
knowing that these kids go to the candy shops and eat those chocolates, you've killed one, and to continue that behavior, there was no conscience.
No. It's unbelievable though that there are people that just don't have any compassion.
Mm-mm.
She sounds like a psychopath.
I mean, I'm thinking just that whole Fatal Attraction movie. Remember how you felt the first time you saw that movie? Like, surely there aren't people like this. Well, this is a real life example of it way before.
That is insane. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. Those were some hard times.
Well, they sure were.
A frail disposition, prone to nervousness, fainting, irritability, lack of desire, and hysteria, PTSD, PMS, and perimenopause. I think what Oxford University is trying to say is they've met my wife. But don't worry, there's good news. Another study from a different university has said that listening to hard times and true crimes is guaranteed not to harm your womb in any way, shape, or form, including but not limited to moving around inside your body. So make sure you're telling everybody you know, and a few people you don't, to check us out. Till next time, goodbye.